and today we will be discussing homelessness and how maps and apps can be used by police to do things like track homeless contacts, document encampments, analyze data, and share information. I'm joined today by Chris Fox, a product engineer with our solutions team, and also Deputy Mike Jones from the San Bernardino Sheriff's Office, Homeless Outreach and Proactive Enforcement, or HOPE team. Today's webinar is focused on police, but any of the maps and apps we will be showing can and are being used by all of the various stakeholders trying to make an impact on homelessness. We recognize that many chronically homeless are victims of circumstance, be it mental illness, addiction, or because of socioeconomic factors. So the focus of the maps and apps we are going to cover today and the work of agencies like the San Bernardino Sheriff's Department are not to criminalize or persecute homeless, but to support strategies to reduce the impact of homelessness on our communities. With this in mind, let's take a look at our agenda. We're going to start out by discussing how maps and apps are impacting homelessness, and Chris is going to talk about some of the ArcGIS solutions created specifically for reducing homelessness. We're then going to see how San Bernardino Sheriff's Department is using technology to support the HOPE team and documenting homeless contacts, and also to support interagency information sharing. After that, we're going to wrap up with some next step resources for you, and like always during our webinars, as time permits, we'll take questions. During the webinar, feel free to type your questions in the chat window. We'll try and answer them as we go, and also save some for the end. If we do not get to them, however, we will respond to you after the webinar via email. So how can maps and apps impact homelessness, you may be asking yourself? Well, GIS can support many different patterns of use, including organizing your data. So GIS enables the collection of information from many different sources, including field data collection and also existing disparate databases and systems. So geo-enabled data can then be combined into a single dynamic map, making it easier to understand the problem that you're looking at. ArcGIS also allows you to collect new data in real time. So with mobile applications, like you're going to see in a little bit, officers can collect data from the field, such as homeless contacts, new encampments, and share this data in real time. That brings us to the next point, sharing information. So as this data is collected and analyzed, it can be shared via operational dashboards and in ArcGIS online groups for collaboration. It also helps deploy tactics and allocate resources. So personnel can use these maps to quickly assess and identify areas where homeless populations are concentrated, also locations of available resources, and where additional services may be needed. It's also a great way to inform command staff. So operations dashboards can be used by command staff to monitor the progress of tactics and enable decision-making at the executive level. Finally, it's a great way to educate the public and other stakeholders. So maps can be organized to share information, whether it's in a story map or another format, so that the community can better understand health risks, effects on neighborhoods, and infrastructure, and information about ongoing homeless reduction strategies. So this brings us to our first poll question of the day. Poll question number one, on a scale of 1 to 5, how big of an issue is homelessness in your community? 1, it's not a problem. 2, minor nuisance. 3, it's problematic. 4, a serious issue. Or 5, a major epidemic. Give you a minute to answer that, and then Chris will give us the results.
So John, we got the results back. We have at 45% a serious issue, 38% said it was problematic, 11% said a major epidemic, and 6% said a minor nuisance. Nobody responded with not a problem.
Oh, wow. So pretty eye-opening, I think, and it really tells us that it's really a big issue for everybody. I have a quick question for you, Deputy Jones. We see a lot of people on the street panhandling, etc., and I think we always think automatically that that person is homeless. Is this always the case, or is there a difference between truly homeless, chronically homeless, etc.?
Yeah, so we see a lot of our panhandlers are supporting addictions and things, trying to make ends meet, not always homeless. We did our own little study with our program, went out and questioned them and seen what the needs were from the people that were panhandling. And now the people we contacted, about 60% were not actually homeless. A lot of them were just trying to make ends meet, support that addiction issue, or make rent, pay for medical issues, things like that. The difference between homeless and chronic just would be the HUD definition of chronic homeless, which a lot of the federal organization or federal money towards organizations to reduce or end homelessness would be that they are living on the street for a year or more with a disability factor, or have 4 episodes of homeless in the past 3 years, again with a disability factor. So we see a lot more people that are just homeless for under a year. A lot of people end up nationally, they say about 75% of the folks resolve their homeless on their own within 1 year.
Great, thanks. So moving on, let's look at some of the ArcGIS solutions we have for homelessness. So if you're not aware, we have a whole solutions team, which Chris is a part of. I'll let Chris talk about exactly what solutions do, but just think of them as maps and apps that deliver ArcGIS platform configurations. Chris, do you want to tell us a little bit more about solutions, what you do, and what the homeless solutions are?
Yeah. So the ArcGIS Solutions Group works to build configurations of ArcGIS to solve common problems that we see across industries. One of those areas that I particularly focus on are with local governments, so cities and counties who are working. And all of these solutions that I'm going to show and that we make available are free. They're available to you as part of your ArcGIS organization, so you have access to them, and they're easy to deploy and stand up in your organization and get you started. They're also configurable, so oftentimes when you don't have anything and you're looking to, maybe you see homelessness as a problem in your community, but you don't have any maps and apps yet to address any of those things, solutions would be a great place to start and then configure them to meet your needs. So that's kind of the overview I would give with solutions. So now I want to take some time to talk about some of the solutions that are available for homelessness.
And it's really 4 solutions, right?
What's that? Oh yeah, yes.
Really
there's 4 solutions. Each of those solutions may have a couple maps and apps that go along with it, but I'll highlight all those in the presentation. So
sure.
The first one is the homeless point in time count. This is a configuration of Survey 123 that can be used by Health and Human Services or law enforcement and their network of volunteers to conduct a sheltered and unsheltered survey of homeless individuals. So the Department of Housing and Urban Development, or the HUD, requires that any continuum of care communities conduct an annual survey of homeless persons who are sheltered, either in transitional housing, emergency shelters, or safe havens. And they also must conduct a unsheltered survey every other year or on odd number years. So the homeless point in time count leverages HUD modeled surveys, so surveys that the HUD has put out as baselines for information that you want to capture. And we've created a configuration in Survey 123 that takes those 4 surveys and simplifies them down into one form and progressively shows the right questions based on your responses. So this way you can get an inventory or a kind of count the number of homeless individuals and get some demographic information about those individuals in the community. The next app that I want to talk about is the Health Resource Inventory application, which is a configuration of a web app builder for ArcGIS, and it can be used to inventory facilities that are offering services such as services for the homeless, drug treatment, or other types of providers. So we also use this app as part of our solutions for the opiate epidemic, for individuals who are suffering from addictions to opiates, which often turns into individuals who become homeless because of those addictions. So this app allows you to capture those facilities and document some information about the services that those facilities offer. The next application that I want to talk about is the Homeless Service Locator application, which is a configuration of Web App Builder for ArcGIS. And this can be used by the general public or engaged organizations to locate facilities that are providing homeless services to individuals or families. And it can also be used to find services that are available to individuals who are at risk of becoming homeless. So trying to get to those people before they become homeless to get some assistance. So this is typically used by those individuals who are looking for services that might include food assistance, emergency shelter, housing assistance, or life and work skill training. The final application is the Homeless Activity Reporter, which is also a configuration of Survey 123. So whereas the point in time count survey is typically conducted on a single night of the year in January, the Homeless Activity Reporter application can be used year round by the general public to report activity in the community. So locations of individuals and encampments. And this can just give you a better sense of the homeless population throughout the year. And some organizations, some communities may want to respond to these reports as they come in. And I'll show some of those workflows in the upcoming demos. So with that context, I think it'd be good to jump into some demos now. Okay, so here I'm showing the homeless count survey, the point in time count survey, which is a configuration of Survey 123. I'm showing it right now in a browser, but I could also access this survey from my mobile device. And so this would be used by members of the organization or volunteers on the night of count. So what I can do here, I want to highlight some of the information that we're capturing and show some of the flow or the logic of the survey. What's nice about Survey 123 is I can progressively show questions depending on my responses. So for example, if the person is in a shelter, I want to know the name of the shelter and the type of shelter. If they're not, those questions are suppressed. Next, we want to determine if we're able to survey the person. The HUD provides two kind of paths to perform this count. Sometimes, ideally, you're able to interview the individual so you can get more detailed information about them and some of their other members of their household. But in some cases, volunteers might not feel the area is safe or they might not feel comfortable interviewing the person. In that case, they're going to do an observation-based interview. So or an observation-based survey. They're going to fill out some of the information based on what they observe of the individual and other members of their household. So in this, let's run through the interview based. We're giving some details that I can read off, and it's really worded as though the questions that you would ask the individual. So can I have some of your time? Did somebody else already interview you or conduct the survey? We don't want to double count them, so nobody else has. Where are you sleeping tonight? So this gets at unsheltered or sheltered locations. How many members of the household are there? So for example, what this really drives is, depending on the number that I enter here, I'm going to get another set of questions that I'm going to interview that person on. And if I had two members of the family or two members of the household, I would repeat the same questions twice, one for each individual in the household. In this case, I'll just go through it once. I can also specify how many children are with them as well. So the first couple questions, what is your initials? If this was the second person, how are they related? We're going to get information about their age, their ethnicity, their race, gender. We're going to get information about their veteran status. We're going to ask information about whether this is the first time they've been homeless. So this gets at some of the chronic homelessness information that Deputy Jones mentioned earlier, and how long have you been homeless. Finally, we're going to capture information about their location. So here, if I was out in the field on my mobile device or my browser, I could use my current location and capture that. And ultimately, I'm going to submit that survey and move on to the next household to conduct that survey. What's nice about Survey 123 is you get some built-in capabilities that go along with the survey. So here are the results of that survey. What I'm seeing here is the questions exposed, and I could see some nice graphical representation of the responses. So for people who were staying in a shelter, here's kind of a breakdown of the types of programs that they were staying with. Whether we were able to survey the person, whether it was a interview-based survey or an observation-based survey. The response, if they were willing to be surveyed, where were they sleeping, etc. So all of this information from the survey is breaking down into these nice graphs and charts and different widgets. I can also visualize some of these items on a map, so it provides a nice overview of the responses. What we also provide with the solution is a configuration of operations dashboard. So this is a sneak peek of a dashboard that we're releasing next week that you'll have available to you as part of the homeless count solution. This dashboard is intended to be up on the big board when I'm conducting the survey, when I'm getting kind of a overview or a high level look of the results up in the night of count. So we're breaking down some of the key aspects, how many adults, children, and veterans have been interviewed or observed, how many households and how many individuals were surveyed, whether they were sheltered or unsheltered. We're seeing a breakdown of the age distribution as well as race and gender. We also have some information about how frequently they've been homeless in the past 3 years. So this gets us up some of the chronic homelessness. On average, how long have they been homeless this last time, and how many days total in the past 3 years have people been homeless, as well as a heat map kind of highlighting the areas where there are concentrations of homeless individuals. The next solution that I want to talk about is the homeless activity reporter. So this is looks very familiar. It's also a configuration of Survey 123, but this is the solution that you would stand up and you can make available to the general public to report the location of an individual or an encampment throughout the year. So whereas the point in time count is done on a single night, this could be used to gauge or get more insight into where individuals and encampments are throughout the year. So I can provide details about the type of activity, provide any additional details when I observed it, upload a picture. If I capture it from my phone, I could upload it there, and whether I would like to be contacted to get more information. I'm also going to give out my my location, or the location where I observed the activity. What's nice about this solution is that we offer a configuration of crowdsourced manager that can be used by law enforcement or health and human services to triage those reports as they're coming in. So this provides me a list of all the reports that have come in. I can select an individual one. I can see some of the info that was submitted, as well as the contact information of the person who submitted it. I can see any attachments that were submitted with the report. And then I can edit some details. So I can indicate that I've received this report, and I can also select who I'm going to assign it to. So I might want to assign it to law enforcement to follow up on. And ultimately, when I resolved the issue, I could add a resolution and mark the issue as resolved and save that out. So this is their kind of back office application that allows you to triage those reports that are coming in from the community. The homeless service locator can be used by the general public to locate facilities in the community that are offering services to individuals and families experiencing homelessness, as well as individuals and families at risk of becoming homeless. So the way I can use this application is I can search for an address, or I can click on the map, and it's going to buffer that location and return to me all the facilities broken down by the services that they offer. So for example, let's say I was interested in food assistance. I could select that category. I could see that there's 3 facilities offering that service. I can select one, get information about that facility, their phone number. I can get to their website, see when they're open, see all the services that they offer, as well as any comments or details about that particular location. I can also get directions so I can get to that facility. So this is really a nice application to make available to the general public to find these locations that are offering these services. You could also make this application available to the public and people who are interested in volunteering or getting engaged with these locations to offer their time, services, donations. They could find these same facilities as a way to volunteer and to assist the community. The final application that I have here is the Health Resource Inventory application. And this is a configuration of Web App Builder. So this allows me to conduct an inventory of those facilities that are offering these services in the community. So for example, if I want to add a new facility that's offering homeless services, I can select that item in this template list. I could search for an address, or I can click on the map. And then I can start to provide some details on that facility, its name, address, any contact information, the website, when they're open, what type of capacity they have. So if they're a shelter, how many beds are available. And then I can also populate the types of services that they offer. So they offer food assistance, life and work skill training. And finally, I'm going to provide any comments on that facility. And all of this information pours into that homeless service locator app that I just showed. So as soon as I enter this facility, and if I were to go back to the homeless service locator application, that facility would now be available in the map, and members of the general public could find that facility and find out about the types of services that they offer. The last thing I want to highlight, and we're going to send this link out as well at the end of the presentation, is where you can get all of these solutions, all these maps and apps that I've highlighted. You can get them from solutions.arcgis.com. Here we're talking about reducing homelessness. And what we have there are the point in time count, that health resource inventory that I just showed, the service locator, as well as the activity reporter. Each of these applications has a try it live. So all of these apps that I've shown, they have links that you can play around with the app and understand how it behaves and see how it might work. And it also has help on how you can stand up these apps and deploy them within your organization. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to John and Deputy Jones to talk about some more work that they've done.
Thanks, Chris. So that brings us to our next poll question. I'm going to go ahead and ask it. This is a multiple choice, so you select as many as are applicable to your agency. The question is, what is your department's current level of response to homelessness? So 1, you have no written policy, you're not sure. 2, you have policies governing homeless contacts. This could be what you do when you arrest, how you deal with the property of homeless, etc. Number 3 is you have policies for data collection and documentation of contacts, and could be encampments as well. Number 4, you have a devoted specialized unit that deals specifically with homeless people. And number 5, you might have a task force or the ability to share information between the various agencies in your jurisdiction or your neighboring agencies. So select as many as possible. We'll give you a minute to answer, and then Chris will give us the results.
All right, John, we got the results back. So 48% said that they have a specialized homeless unit. 45% say they document data collected from homeless contacts. 39% said they have policies governing homeless contacts. 27% said that they have no written policy, and 23% said they're actively sharing information with other agencies.
Great. So that's a good segue for us then to the San Bernardino Sheriff's Hope Team. And this is why we brought Deputy Jones in to talk about how they're using some of these homeless solutions and how they've configured them to meet their needs. So why don't we start by you talking about what the Hope Team is and how it got started, Deputy Jones.
Yeah, thank you. We're a proactive outreach team of 3 for our county. So we're assigned out of our headquarters to engage homeless and homeless encampments issues around the county. And we work with all of our patrol stations, plus most of the police agencies within our county. And we started in 2014 to address quality of life issues. Our Sheriff McMahon, one of his campaign promises was to improve quality of life and homeless impacting most of our communities. So we started and connected with a lot of the agencies within the county to try to connect mostly the chronic, the people that we're getting law enforcement calls for, to services to get them beyond homelessness.
When you say there's 3 of you for the county, for those people in different parts of the country might not know much about San Bernardino County. How big is the county?
Yeah, just 3 of us for the small 20,000 square miles. San Bernardino County is the largest county in continental U.S., so we have a large area, but most of the population, about 60%, is in between 2 of the larger cities of San Bernardino and Victorville, and we have a lot of open regions beyond that.
And do you guys have any idea how many homeless are in the county?
Our point in time count numbers for this year haven't been out, but last year we had about 1,800 homeless on our point in time count night.
Wow. So in a typical day, you guys respond to calls for service with complaints about homeless or encampments? How do you guys? What's a typical day look like for you?
So we're teamed up with Behavioral Health, our Veterans Affairs. We have a VA within our county. Several of the private groups that are federally funded through HUD. But we don't necessarily respond to just calls for service. If we're in a city, being that the county is so large, we kind of go through different regions on different days. And if we happen to be that area and we see a transient call, we certainly do take that call. Typically just hiking through our riverbeds, into our foothill communities, driving down the street, talking to individuals to try to link them with services.
And that's probably a good point. So if for those of you who don't know San Bernardino, it's Southern California. We have a lot of riverbeds or washes, as we call them, and they're kind of areas where homeless concentrate. Is that correct?
Water-free riverbeds in Southern California, and they like to go down there with usually some growth, the trees and stuff, and kind of out of sight, out of mind.
Okay, and so you've started using GIS. Well, how did you document your contacts with the homeless and document encampments before you started using Esri?
So when we began, we reached out to some of the teams that existed prior to 2014 across the country, And one of the things was a lot of them were trying to document their contacts based on some of the lawsuits that have been around the country towards law enforcement or the criminalization of homelessness. So we felt it was very important to document all of our individual contacts and how many times we came to talk to that person, provided services to that person, if we housed them. And all of that was done through a spreadsheet. So we would fill out a field interview card, and we'd come back to the office and enter those as we could, city by city across the county. So we had about 30 different spreadsheets to enter depending on where we had been the day prior.
Okay, so why don't we just go ahead and jump right into them then? So there's several workflows that you're supporting with GIS. The first is those homeless contacts that you're making, and then also the mapping of the homeless encampments. So you're using, as Chris already talked about, Survey 123 is a great tool for this, for creating these forms where you interact with the homeless and documenting that contact. Collector is another good way, and we'll get into these in a minute, for collecting that data. And you're also able to search these homeless contacts and encampments using Collector. And then you're able to put it all together with the homeless contact query and data download page that we'll show. And as Chris showed, you're able to do analytics on that Survey 123 data. So let's take a look at the first thing you're using, which is Survey 123. So this is a free to download app that's available for Android, iOS, or the browser. You're able to create smart surveys that are easy to use. These surveys can be edited, so you've edited this one for your purposes. And why don't you just jump into it? What's going on here?
So one of the things is we have several of the police departments within our county working together to provide one list. We also have a corrections team, and then our individual stations. So we have our reporting agency for our purposes today. The HOPE team has the mapping capability, which pinpoints the camp. We break it down city by city, being that we're a large county with so many cities. So today being in Redlands, we also break it down by region to see, along with the homeless point time count numbers, if our numbers are similar. Redlands is in our East Valley area. And for today's purposes, we'll use John as our homeless John, and we'll enter him into the name field. And for the birthday, we'll do it for April Fools of last year. We have the gender, the race. Commonly, when we're out, we might talk to a homeless person walking somewhere, pushing a cart. Maybe they just crashed somewhere, so we try to document where that person might sleep if it's not at the encampment, so we know that the mapping might not be the location they are sleeping at, but that we contacted them at. We also have, if it's an individual, family, or other. So if you have a family, if you click the family box, it pops open other boxes for more information on how many people are in the family, how many children are in the family, and then notes about the family. We often capture if they have the ages and things like that. Have the phone number, also creates the pop-up. A lot of them have the government phones. We have the note box to track notes that we're in the process with them, things like that. With the HUD definition, the disability factor often comes into play. So we document the disability factors that they might occur. And when you pop that open, it has the different options. If it's something like a developmental, you might have an other, so we might put that in, but the most common, the mental health, drugs, or physical. And like with Chris, the veteran information, we'll try to provide them with the initiatives to end homelessness for veterans. So we document the branch of service and usually honorable, dishonorable discharge. We also have the box to refer them to a provider, and our most commonly used providers are there. These are all, could be changed for your areas, but most commonly we have our own resource guide that we provide them. DMV vouchers, our probation department has funding for California, has AB 109 funding to house probationers, alcohol, drug services, behavioral health. So the different programs if they access one of those services, or maybe a different service like a faith-based organization, shelter, things like that, we have the capability of putting that in as a text box. And then once they're housed through the process, we have our most common housing providers, our behavioral health, the Veterans Affairs, and Step Up is one of our large organizations in the county. And again, with other to provide the different pop-up boxes for those individuals that might get housed. We also have a correction team. So if the person's arrested in any of the cities, they could enter that, the booking number, if they're a sex offender, and then when they are arrested, if they're in custody, we have 4 corrections facilities, so which correction facility they're in. And our corrections team is a reentry team. They link with them in the jail to get them with services. We have the income. A lot of them have Social Security. CalWorks is our welfare programs. So just to document if they're getting any type of income and that typical amount of money that they might get. One of our Medicare providers is looking at housing homeless, so we started documenting if they have medical insurance and if it is, who it is. Obviously, excuse me. Obviously, with chronic homeless, to determine that with the years homeless, the months. And then we are one of the access points for our coordinated entry system. We have our consent on there. If they completely refuse to talk to us, we have the refusal box on the next line there. And then we have the capability of capturing an image, uploading documents. So for today's purposes, talking with Homeless John, we'll take a picture of him here. There's Homeless John. And then that goes into the database to look back if we need to see who that person was or share it with a provider to get them services. We're looking for literally homeless, actually homeless out on the street. If they're in a hotel or something, we have a lot of families that might be living in motels that we link with. And then one of the kind of new data that we've started capturing is next of kin. We've noticed with our corner division, a lot of them go indigent and things like that. So we have the capability of connecting them with a next of kin. So if our corners division does have a transient death, which seems like a growing thing around the country to start releasing those numbers, looks like in our county we have over 1 a week. So we're able to provide that next of kin information to get them linked with their family. And then that completes the survey, the little checkbox down at the bottom, you click on that. And that goes to the survey complete. If you're connected to Wi-Fi or cell service, you can send that immediately. If not, you do the send later and it puts it into a outbox. For the purpose here, send it. And it goes back to the original window with the collect, the inbox, and the sent. And if you go to the sent box, we did this one here at Esri, and you can look at the map. And again, it shows exactly where you are, where that person was. And back to the list mode.
Okay, now everybody knows exactly where my office is. Let's go on to the next one. So this is Collector. So what we're using Collector for, what you guys are using Collector for, is to collect information about encampments, and you're also mapping contacts. Again, Collector, like Survey 123, is free to download. It's on any mobile application or device. It also enables that disconnected environment so that it'll sync up once you get back into service, which is really important when you're in a big county like San Bernardino, where a lot of remote areas might not have service. Let me start that. So Deputy Jones, why don't you just run us through what we're looking at here and how Collector works for collecting information about these encampments.
So on this one, it's under the Collector application. So one of the things is we use this for mapping, not for tracking. So we map our homeless, for if there is a disaster, a flood, an earthquake, we have the knowledge here, but for the purposes today, the encampments, the individual blue dots, those are all individual contacts in the city of Victorville, which is in the north part of our county. The different color icons, the red is a large encampment, orange is a medium, and yellow is a small encampment. So if we look at the encampment here, the individual dots, this is a large empty piece of land, and the individual dots are encampments around the property. But when we use the encampment icon, we're able to start that. To build a new one, you click the little plus at the top of the screen. It gives you the 3 options based on the tent size, number of tents at the location, not the number of people. And then when we open on one of these, the large, it acquires the location. We have the description of the location that when we hit that box, it'll give a text box to put in. So the buildings around Esri for the purposes today, but to describe that location. And our hopes of this is to share it with our public works and our county code enforcements to try to help them with the cleanups and things. So the encampment status, if it's occupied, if it maybe was abandoned, and if it's cleaned up. So to document in the 3 different things, if we do a 72-hour notice to get them moved along, if it's occupied. We know most of them have pets, and if we share this information with our public works or code enforcement, we want them to be aware of maybe some pets that are at the location. We know that a lot of them have hazardous materials, human waste and things like that. So we want them to be aware so they're prepared with the cleanup functions when they go to the camp. And if there's any biohazards, the batteries and diabetic needles that always occur at encampments. And again, you have the note box for any further notes of where they are in the process, if they've been posted. And we have 3 of our departments working on this right now. So them entering those encampment sizes for the purposes today of the HOPE team. And then you hit the submit, and that'll create the encampment at the location. And again, it'll bring it up onto the mapping. And for today's purposes, it shows the Esri offices. One of the things we also did is incorporated the landowners. So the property lines are the red lines that are located around the encampment. And that way we can reach out to a private property owner. We know if it's county property, city property, whoever it might be. We work with a lot of our cities to have letter of agencies for trespassing and things like that. So we could work on getting those encampments cleaned up if they're affecting the nearby communities. And when you click on the bottom, it just brings up again the information you had on that encampment once you click the icon, and it shows us what we just talked about that we entered.
So once you've collected all this information, then it's available to search, correct? And this is also within Collector. And why don't you walk us through how you search for a contact?
So again, with the all the individual contacts that are entered into there, you go to the little search magnifying glass, and for the purposes, we'll look at Moya. You enter that, and that'll pop up a search of it, and you can see the blue highlighted dot about 3/4 of the way down. And as we zoom into that, it's in the city of Highland area. So it goes right to her location of where she typically is camping. It brings up some information about her that would be entered into the survey 123, any organizations she might be contacted with. And you're able to look at their exact location. So a lot of times we use this for our providers to say, hey, this person you're looking for, she was contacted here, or if they move around to different areas. Then another example with homeless John, we look up Beck, and there's multiple Becks in our database. So it shows all the people that have been contacted with Beck in their name. So we see here at the bottom is John that we entered. And when we click on him, again, it'll show the location that we spoke with him, and it creates those small blue dots when you're not highlighted on them. If we click at the bottom, it brings up the information that we entered into the survey about the individual. So if it has a phone number, things like that, if an organization was looking for that person, we've also used it as a database for some of our specialized teams that were looking for somebody for an active warrant or something in a large cases, not the small cases, but crime against children or a homicide type thing.
So yeah, and that's a great example of, as soon as you collected that information on me, it was available to search and by any of your other ArcGIS applications that your agency is using. So that brings us to our next piece that you guys have, and this is the homeless contact dashboard. I'm going to actually go out of this and show the dashboard. Here it is. So Mike, do you want to talk about this, and maybe I'll click through it? What are we looking at here?
So these are contacts by year. So the yellow cream color ones are the most recent contacts, and then going back further, they get the darker colors. When you click on any of these individuals, it shows the information that we collected, the city, all the information of exactly where they were. And then, as you see, this has got all the historical data back to January of last year for 1,640. But if you wanted to search it by any of the ranges on the side, so if you do it by date range, and since October till today, it brings up the contacts just in that time frame. So you can narrow it down by all of the different things, reporting agency, the region, the city, contact name, and importantly, demographics. So again, kind of on the database of maybe looking for somebody, male, Hispanic, and between these ages, and it'll bring up, again, the people that are in that age range around the county or in a city, whatever it might be. So there, once it's filtered, 36 people within that age range within the timeline around there. A good example is just last night after hours, I got a call about a female that had been found deceased in a flood control, and went right to the map and looked at the map of where she was and located that same person and was able to provide a name because she didn't have any identification on her. So using this dashboard, we're able to get a lot of information, print the maps, and all the data that is searched. When you do the data fields that John had clicked, you could also bring up the document at the bottom. And if you go to the options tab, it'll create a CSV file and able to export that to make an Excel document. And we utilize this with taking away some of the data. But for our county, we have a homeless advisory board out of our executive level offices for our county CAO. And we provide them with a monthly chronic homeless list. So anybody that fits the chronic homeless definition since the first of the year, we create a list through the collector and provide that list to them.
Okay, that's really cool. Let's look at the next application. So Chris already kind of covered this. So everything you're collecting in survey 123 is also shown here, correct?
Yeah, this shows all the data in the analytics by department, by the contact dates, all the information that's collected in collector is also able to be printed out here with the tables, so you can see the graphs of all the different demographics or whatever it might be of by city. So again, how I mentioned, most of our homeless are in Victorville and San Bernardino. It shows directly onto this chart.
Great. Let me jump back into our PowerPoint here. So we mentioned that you are sharing and have other agencies participating. I know you guys have several contract cities that you work with in the county, but you also have other police departments sharing data as well, right? And do you want to talk about this group and how that works?
Yeah, so again, from the Homeless Advisory Board for our county, out of the CAO's office, one of our deputy chiefs was asked to try to get all of law enforcement working together within the county to create kind of that master list of actual homeless people, so we make sure that the most vulnerable people that law enforcement is getting calls about all the time, get those people off the street, get them connected with resources. So we have about 20 stations, but we also have 11 PDs in our county, and we're working on we meet with them on a quarterly basis, and we're working on getting them access to the database so they can enter their homeless contacts. We could see if somebody was going from a city to a city. As we see in San Bernardino County, most of our homeless have some connection with the city that they're staying in. If it's growing up there, some family member there, whatever it might be. But we can kind of track all that data to have one database and everybody on the same page in law enforcement in our county.
And so everything that you just saw that you guys are using is here. And if you have an ArcGIS online account or Esri account for that matter, you have access to everything you saw here. So you need a named user account, access to your agency's ArcGIS online portal. If you're not sure if you have this or how to do it, you can either contact us, we'll have our information at the end, or contact your own IT or GIS department, and they could probably get you set up. Also, Survey 123 and Collector are free to download. All of the solutions that Chris showed are free to download, and you can get up and running with this stuff right away. Couple key points: all data is kept at a single layer, accessible to everyone for searching and download. So when there's multiple agencies, that layer is one data set that everybody can search. And also for your information, another good point is only the creator of that record is allowed to edit it, so other people can't be in there changing your records. Do we have time for one? Let's do one last poll question. I think this is a quick one. Which of the below workflows can be supported by ArcGIS? 1, field data collection; 2, information sharing; 3, creating a resource inventory; 4, reporting homeless activity; or 5, all of the above. Give you a minute to answer that, and then Chris will give us the results. Chris, how did we do?
I haven't gotten the results back yet.
Oh, okay.
There we go. Almost everybody said all of the above, 95%. Okay.
Perfect. That was a softball. So good job, everybody. And so we talked about some of the resources, and Chris mentioned right now those homeless solutions we showed are available at this landing page. Next week, they'll also be on our law enforcement landing page. And also, we will share with all the attendees where to go for Collector and Survey 123 as well. Chris, we got any questions from the audience before we wrap it up?
Yeah, so we had several questions on the activity reporter application. I answered those through the chat. They kind of focused on where could you get it? Could you access it from a mobile device? And like all Survey 123 forms and surveys, they can be accessed through a web browser. You could access on your mobile device or your desktop, or you can access them from the app on a mobile device. We do have some questions. I believe that it might be generically to all of us. Is everything being hosted in ArcGIS Online or on premise in a portal?
And I think that's depends on how you want to do it. And Chris, maybe you can answer that. Are those solutions, do they work in Portal or ArcGIS Online either?
Yeah, so they work. What I showed today was in ArcGIS Online, but they're also supported using Enterprise 10.6 is the minimum version required for the solutions that I showed today. They're leveraging some capabilities that are new at 10.6, as well as that new ops dashboard is supported at 10.6. But you can do that in ArcGIS Online or on premise.
And so San Bernardino, for instance, is hosting the organization on their portal and giving the other agencies a login to access that data.
We have a question for Deputy Jones. Does your agency fill out a looks like an FI card simultaneously, so homeless contact information is included in the CAD database, or is it downloaded into those systems?
So all of our contacts, we've moved away from our written FI card, and we only utilize the Esri application, the Survey 123 application. So all of our data is stored in there. The way we capture into CAD is anybody that we run into in our unit history, that automatically goes to CAD. So when we're at the car or back to the car, when we run those individuals, it captures their information into CAD. Or if we run them over the air to dispatch.
Great. How long did it take you to collect the homeless data, and who in your department conducted the surveys?
So for the Survey 123 application, that is directly when we're in the field and doing outreach, and every person we contact, we do a survey on them and capture that information right away, and that is live information that goes directly into the dashboard.
Good. That looks like all the questions that we have.
Okay. So before we wrap up, here's some upcoming public safety webinars. Go to esri.com/PS webinar to register for these. April 18th, we have Managing Civil Unrest using ArcGIS. May 3rd, Supporting Emergency Management Operations using Location Intelligence. And on June 7th, one I'm particularly excited about is Introduction to our brand new ArcGIS Pro add-in to support crime analysis workflows. Look forward to sharing all of our new crime analysis tools in that one. You can also access all of our past webinars at this site, including this one, which has been recorded and will be available early next week. If you want to contact any of us, here's our contact information. We'd be happy to discuss anything you saw today, and would love to hear from you. So thank you, Chris. Thank you, Deputy Jones. For Esri and the rest of our public safety team, signing off. Thank you, and we'll see you next webinar.